Maurice Nicoll, Psychological Commentaries, Volume 1, based on work with Gurdjieff. Birdlip, March 2nd, 1942. The Law of Seven. The Law of Seven and the Idea of Shock. This is Part 8. In life, many things are started which turn out quite differently from what was expected of them. The starting of anything can be represented by the note do. The next stage of its development can be represented by the note re, and the next stage by the note mi. Now, if the development of things were easy, there would be no reason with any particular development that it should not proceed successfully to its fullest stage. That is, the octave would be completed. But two factors prevent this. First, the passage between the notes do and re and mi requires effort to keep the direction of the development in the right alignment with the starting point. Let us take an example. When something is started, let us say an international society for preserving peace or something of that kind, this starting point sounds with the note do. But as the development of this society proceeds, owing to misunderstandings and disagreements, and many other factors, the original line is not quite adhered to. It begins to deviate to one side or the other of the original direction. Instead of developing in a straight line, it starts turning its direction as in another direction. The result is that things in life started with one object may turn out to give completely contradictory results. For example, a peace society may become a source of war. The second factor in preventing the full and successful development of a thing is the check or the constriction or slowing point between the notes mi and fa. When anything develops up to the stage of mi, the place of obstruction is encountered inevitably, and unless a shock comes here from the outside, the octave will not proceed. That is, the further development stages of that thing will not be reached. So apart from the tendency to deviation, there is also the point where retardation or check appears, called the place of shock. Everything develops by stages, but it can only develop rightly by fulfilling the law of seven. Deviation is not preceded by the law, and to halt at the place of shock is failure. Each note must be sounded fully at each stage. For example, to speak and read and write, a child must learn his letters before he learns his words. He must learn his words before he learns his phrases, and then he will get a shock from life because he is surrounded by people who are speaking and writing and reading. Then he will pass to fa. But if he has not sounded do properly, that is, if he has never learnt his letters, or if he has not sounded re strongly, that is, if he has never learnt from his words, from the letters properly, and so on, his powers of speaking regarding to or writing or reading will be limited accordingly. You all know the amateur who never has learned his subject properly. And on the other hand, we can all understand what is meant by a man who is well grounded. When a man develops his craft by proper stages and passes by a shock given by his master to fulfill craftsmanship, then you have development proceeding in harmony with the law of seven and rightly knit together. In the case of the marvelous development of a man from a single cell, shocks are given at certain points in the progressive evolution of the various parts of the body as a whole. One cell, by dividing it into 2 and 2 into 4 and 4 into 16 until 50 stages of division are reached, in 9 months produces 100 trillion living cells. The dividing process is due to the law of three. The ordering and arranging and integration of the whole developing man of living cells with the shocks given at certain points is controlled by the law of seven. The first shock in the first octave in the whole process is, of course, given by fertilization. There are many ways to see how things reach a certain stage and cannot get further without help from the outside, that is, without a shock. Have you ever thought that nature brings things to a point and stops? But man can give them a shock and take them further in their development. Think of wheat, for instance. Loaves do not grow in a wheat field. Think of the uses man makes of raw materials. Scales, Part 9. Let us speak for a moment about the diagrams. A diagram is only a means of understanding. It is like a map. A map is a diagram of which a country, which gives the position and relation to things. The whole ray of creation, including the octave from the sun, is a map. But it is a very strange map. Ordinary maps are either one scale or another. You can have a map of a town you live in showing the position or your house, or you can have a map of the county you live in showing only your town but not your house. Or you can have a map of the world which shows neither your town nor your house. Or you can have a map of the solar system in which the world appears as a mere dot. This is what is meant by different scales, but the ray of creation is an extraordinary map because it is not on one scale, but on many different scales. Take the note of C, which stands for sidereal or stars in the Great Ray. The note is called all possible systems of starry worlds. If we take the ray in its physical or external meaning, this note C represents a map showing all starry systems. The diameter of the physical universe, as shown by the 100-inch telescope, is 600 million light years, and in this vast, incredible space, 100 million enormous stellar systems exist, each containing 100,000 million suns. The next note, law, in our ray is the only one of these stellar systems. It's only one of these stellar systems. Our Milky Way is far smaller in scale. The next note, Sol, represents only one of the 1,000 of million suns in our galaxy, namely our sun and so on, till our minute moon is reached. Every note represents a map on a different scale, and this ordering of scales at different levels is due to the law of 7, which enables us to find the position of our Earth in the universe. For this reason, the law of 7, or the law of the octave, can be said to be the law that gives the relation of the part to the whole. But this law, the creative activities, but for this law, the creative activities of the three forces would not be bound into any fixed and firm relationship and order. That is, they would not be organized, but merely a heap. It must be understood that the universe is a vast, living, coordinated organism, and everything created is created at a certain point and on a certain scale in this vast organism in which everything is connected and nothing is independent and isolated. Everything is created and knit together from the heights to the depths of the universe by the double action of the law of 3 and the law of 7. This brings us to what is meant in this work by relative understanding. In order to understand anything rightly, you must know something about the whole before you can understand the part. For example, you cannot understand the earth by taking the earth by itself. You must understand something of the solar system, then again of the galaxy and so on, in order to have any right understanding of the earth. In the same way, you cannot understand the town you live in unless you know something of the country you live in, and again, the continent, and finally of the world you live in. To try to understand a thing by itself as something isolated is impossible, for everything is connected and depends on something else. For the whole universe is connected. This is the basis of what is called relative understanding in the work. You may have to know only very little about the whole in order to understand the part, about which you can know far more. But unless you think relatively, your understanding will be wrong. It would be useless, for any instance, to try to understand a sparking plug unless you understood something about the car as a whole and again about electricity and about man and his needs and so on. And this is what science is finding today, namely that every domain of science is connected and nothing can be understood separately. And this is especially the case in medicine, for example. For every part of the body depends on another part, and everything is connected to form the whole bodily man. And when we have reached that point, we have to understand about man himself and his significance and the meaning on earth. The ray of creation with the sun octave gives us a relative understanding of man. It is a relative diagram and must be understood that in that light. I've noticed that some of you think or seem to think there is only one ray of creation. This is, of course, quite wrong. There's an infinite number. We speak of our ray of creation, the ray we find in ourselves. By it, we find our position in relation to the whole universe. Imagine a vast tree, the undivided trunk of the absolute. The first great branches known are the note C, all possible systems. You would have to conceive 100 million great branches at least. We then take our great branch, our galaxy. Each branch divides into 10,000 million lesser branches. These are suns. We take our sun and to finally come to the twig where we dwell in this gigantic tree of the world. And at the end of our twig is a bud called our moon. But surely you cannot imagine this is the only twig and bud, and that the absolute terminates our creation in our solitary moon.